Welcome back to another episode of Health is Wealth. And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. And as always, I am beyond grateful and thankful from the bottom of my heart for each and every one of you who is tuning into today's episode and into the podcast. As every week I am dropping a new episode on Sunday, just sharing, some thoughts and words of things that I'm just learning on in my own crazy ride that we call life. Things that I'm learning for the first time, things that I'm just understanding in a different, point of view, in hopes that it brings value into your life, perhaps maybe inspire you or motivate you. So again, truly thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope it does bring you value into your life today. And what I wanted to talk about on this week's episode is, what's the story that you're telling yourself? I often believe that the biggest thing that holds us back from becoming the person that we are meant to be, that we are born to be, our purpose, from going forward, living that life that we're supposed to, is simply, what's the story that we are telling ourselves? And when I think about this, I often think about, our past, right? How we grew up, where we came from, the things that we've gone through in life, maybe a person that we once were. I think a lot of the story that we tell ourselves attributes to the holdbacks that often keep us from being the person that we want to be or should be and need to be. And oftentimes what it could look like is whether there's a past trauma, perhaps just the way you grew up. I think a lot of what we tell ourselves on why we can't be this person because we grew up in a certain way. You grew up in a certain family. Maybe you've made some mistakes in life. You've taken a couple wrong paths. I mean, God knows I have for sure. But I think, if we continue to tell ourselves the same old story, then how do we expect the narrative to change? How do we expect anything to change if we continue reliving the past, if we continue to relive a person we once were? And I think it's the biggest thing that does hold us back, right? And so it's really about rewriting that story, telling a new story, changing the narrative, because that's the only way that we are going to stop reliving these old chapters, these old, scenes of our lives and be able to progress forward. Well, it's because I was once this person that I no longer could be this person, because I've done that, I can't be that, because this is how I grew up, or this is where I grew up, or the family that I grew up with, or the trauma that I had. I cannot step into this new role. And so again, if we can continue to tell ourselves the same old story, then how do we expect things to change, And a lot of time it's a victim, mindset because of this and that, X, Y, and Z. I can't be this person, I don't deserve to have that life. Who am I to think that I could be a bigger person? Because maybe some of our track record shows we haven't done a lot of great things thus yet, right? So far, But if we can understand that if the story is all that is holding us back from stepping into the person, stepping into the role, turning in that, direction, becoming that person, living in that life, then it's time, my friends, to rewrite that story. It's time to tell ourselves a new story and stop using the story that tends to cripple us, handicap us, and to say why we can't do this and twist it, like a movie, right? Do a little plot twist. Use that story to be the reason that you're going to be the biggest underdog to have ever existed. That even though maybe you've had these mistakes that you've made, even though maybe you've had, some unfortunate things that happened to you, rewrite the story to be like, even though those things happen, I'm still going to overcome. I'm still going to be victorious. I'm still going to conquer. I'm not going to let my past define me, but I'm going to allow it to refine me. I will not be a victim of it, but I will be a victor of it. I truly believe if we can change that story in our head, we can change the narrative, then that's all it really takes to change the direction in our lives. The reason we are not heading in the direction and stepping into the role of becoming who it is that we want to be and that we're supposed to be, is because we just keep repeating the story of what's was, right? I was once this person. I lived this life once. These things once happened to me. And so if we continue to repeat and it's on replay and we're in this loop, then how do we expect anything to change, right? It's just like, reading the same chapter in a book over and over and over again. And if you don't start opening up the book to a new chapter, then the story will never continue. The story will never go on because you're still stuck in chapter 1, 2, and 3 when there is chapter 4, 5, 6, and 7 and a sequel. And the story gets better and better as, you become more the superhero of your own story. So again, what is the story that you are telling yourself? And if we want to change the future, then we have to change the story that we tell ourselves. And I truly believe it's one of the biggest things that does hold us back, right? And we're all guilty of it. We tend to think because life has been a certain way for us for such a long time, that everything is obsolete, right? Is absolute, that we can't change things, that there's no way to rewrite the ending. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. The past is past. What's done is done. We can't change the beginning, but understand you can always change the end. But the biggest thing that's going to depend on that is a story that we tell ourselves. And so just go on today knowing that if we can start to tell ourselves a new story, start changing the narratives. Look, you are the author. You are the director of your book and of your movie. You wield, the power to write, to paint, a new canvas, right? And you have that ability to change everything going, forward. And if we can just realize that it's only the story that we are telling ourselves that is keeping us where we are at and keeping us in the past, then all we've got to do is start rewriting a new beginning, and we can change the trajectory. We can change the path. Just because we were this one person doesn't mean that's who we have to be forever. And that's something I remind myself of daily as I continue to rewrite the story in my head, because what once was who I was before is not who I am now, and it's not who I am going to be in the future. And I do use that past to be like, this is going to be the biggest comeback story anyone's ever seen. So I hope that really helps you out here today. And I really think that, again, this is one of the things that keeps us stuck. And if we could rewrite the story, then we can rewrite where we are going on in life. Thank you so much for tuning in to another week's episode. As always, I will see you on the next one.